So welcome to our final session. And as I say, I'm delighted to say we have 4 people on our panel this afternoon. And as I say, in this session, we're looking at the role of skills excellence in delivering zero carbon. We thought we'd leave the easiest subject to the very end. Zero carbon. I'm sure we'll find a solution in the next 30 minutes or so. And as I say, we have Philip Lefevre in the studio, Rhiann Kelly, Jim Brown, Bhavina Bakada, who are online. Welcome to you all. Hopefully we'll see you on screen. Yes, we can see you all. And in fact, I recognise many of those faces because I saw many of you doing line tests yesterday to make sure all would be okay for this afternoon. So look, before we start doing this in detail, just so we can get to know each other as a group, I've got a very simple question for each of you in turn. Philip, if I can start with you. I did promise that I'd let you know this, but unfortunately time didn't allow.
I'm quite excited.
Can you tell me what you feel the biggest carbon sin is in your own life right now? I'll tell you mine if you like. Okay. I feel that I've done 2 COVID tests this is not a criticism, but it's just reality, from a very big box, much of which had to be thrown away, full of chemicals. I have no idea how many of these are being produced. Not a criticism, because we have to have them. But I did feel that that was a bit of a carbon sin, because I'm usually very, very careful. What do you think your biggest carbon sin is right now?
Well, I was literally thinking about this on the way here. No, I was, because so I live in South London, and we're obviously here in Dudley, and I, in coming up here, made the decision to drive rather than take public transport, which is a pretty bad sin that I'm sure everyone's going to, berate me for. But, it is
Did you drive diesel?
No, well, it was, yeah, exactly.
Come on,
yeah,
we're okay. We're okay.
It's a little bit better, but it is, it's about making those choices individually, and that is one that I failed in today. So I apologise on behalf of,
Don't apologise. Just go and plant a tree.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see if we can find out some more on this from Rhiann Kelly, who's here from the UK Corporate Affairs Director for the National Grid. Rhiann, what do you feel that your biggest carbon sin is in your own life right now?
It's a really tricky question, because I've tried to do so much to get it right, and recently got an electric vehicle. So had I driven today, I would have been in that. But I'm very honest, I love traveling. I love discovering other places, and you have to fly. And I do try to offset, but I guess ultimately I'm waiting for planes that are fueled by hydrogen to make them less damaging to the environment.
Can't you just do it on Google Street View like the rest of us have been doing for the last 18 months?
You can't, well, I have been doing that for the last 8 months, but you can't eat the food on Google Street.
No, but you can dial it in. Anyway, I'll leave you, I'm being unfair on you, because I feel the same. Jim Brown, Director, Energy Skills Partnership, what do you feel your biggest carbon sin is right now in your own life?
Mine is very similar. It's the travel. I like to travel, but I must say, with COVID, that has improved greatly. My mileage has gone down from 20,000 miles a year to 2,000 miles a year, and my holiday has been 0, and we are cutting back for the future.
All right, many thanks for that. Just lastly on this, Bhavina Bakada, Senior Campaign and Skills Policy Manager for Make UK. What is your biggest carbon sin in your own life right now?
I've got to agree with Philip. Mine is also driving my car, but it's petrol. So I'm hoping that's not as bad. But I have to say, I do use an eco-friendly car wash, which saves about 150 litres on average per car wash. So that's me doing my bit.
Yeah, and next we'll see you on an electric bike, no doubt.
Definitely.
That's the next stage. Okay, so let's get into the serious matter of the role of skills excellence in delivering zero carbon. Philip Lefevre, Chief Strategy Officer for NCFE. Obviously, you're in partnership with us for this event. Just tell us a bit about NCFE before we go any further.
Yeah, sure. So NCFE is an educational charity that was founded in 1848. So we're very old, but not many people will have heard of us. What we do is we develop qualifications and content in the technical and vocational education sector in a range of different sectors, from education and childcare through to digital skills. So we work really closely with colleges and providers to make sure that there are excellent education pathways available for people across this country and also internationally as well.
And of course, interestingly, when NCFE was founded, pre first industrial revolution,
Yeah, exactly
so this wasn't
right.
even on. This was at the beginning. It was how do we use more? How do we use more?
It was, and in our history, we supported sort of mining communities in the transition away from the mines into different career pathways. So throughout our history, it's all been about how we support transition through education.
How does education help with getting us to zero carbon and delivering the right skills?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think education's got such a fundamental role to play in this. So, if getting to, net zero by 2050 requires seismic changes across a range of different industries. You just think about it with logistics. We've talked about transport, the energy industry itself and construction. That will require fundamentally different skills, fundamentally different occupations required, and then also the skills that sit within job roles to shift as well. The only way we can do that is through having a really high-performing education system that supports people either get their first qualification relevant to a job, or transitioning from one career to another, or just upskilling within their jobs, because this isn't all about job change and new jobs. This is about how do we all, per your first question, rethink the way that we work, and that requires education.
Thank you for that. Now, Rhian Kelly, UK Corporate Affairs Director, National Grid. Obviously, the National Grid in itself is the key to our recovery as a country, because we all rely upon power, but also arguably you're the key to many of our solutions with regards to zero carbon. When I was not that much younger than I am now, I remember one of my colleagues at work, probably maybe in the late 80s, early 90s, hated the fax machine. And I said to her, why do you hate the fax machine? She said, it's on all the time. Now, looking back, she was absolutely right, because it was one of the first things other than your fridge that was on all the time. Nothing else in your house overnight was on. That was it. Maybe the heating clock. Now, how much of your house is on at night? Most of it. The TV's on standby, the fridge is on, the Wi-Fi is on, no one has the fax, but there's loads of other things. In a sense, the National Grid, our use of power, has to dramatically reduce, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're totally right. And actually, we are on all the time. And we at National Grid, play a crucial role, I think, because if we can enable more renewables to come online, if we can make the grid operate in low carbon, then we can enable the whole economy to become lower carbon. But it is already changing, and we are already making progress. So just last month, 80% of the energy that we used was low carbon or renewable. And even in the sort of last year, we've cut carbon emissions across the power system, or the sort of in the last 7 years, we've cut it by 66%. So we're making progress, but I agree there's a long way to go. And in the energy sector alone, the sorts of skills and jobs that we're going to see emerge will change quite a lot. So even at National Grid, we're thinking through what are the new skills that we need? What about new data sets? What about people who think about AI, for example? So we are thinking ourselves about how do we need to change our workforce, reskill our workforce to make sure that we are always leading the charge to net zero.
Thank you for that. Now, Jim Brown, Director, Energy Skills Partnership. Can I ask you about green skills and those that are eco-friendly? Because I, like many other people, may have been quite confused as time has gone by. So just when we thought there might be a solution, for example, for the plastic bag, people said, oh, I'll tell you what, let's use paper. Yeah, that's great. And then they said, well, actually, we can't use paper because they're heavier to transport than plastic, so we use more fuel. Okay, so that's no good. And then you look at what people are developing in terms of the paperless office we were promised when all the IT systems came in. Yeah, the computer uses more energy, but you won't be using so much paper. That never really came to reality. And what I see the remarkable facilities here and the students are working on, much of the work that they're doing is brilliant, but it's delivering us to use our machines, our computers. They tell me that one search engine search is horrific for the air conditioning in the middle of Santa Monica or California or wherever these huge things are, or in the middle of deserts. How do we make sure that just because something looks like it's green, it's actually green?
Wow, there's a question. I think there's a whole education to be done here. The I'm getting a bit of feedback here, so apologies. Behaviours, attitudes, education, awareness raising is all critical in all of this. And how do you ensure everything, what is green is green? I think everything's got a carbon footprint to it, so it's a bit of a balance and trade off against one another. I mean, even electric vehicles, the batteries that go into them have a considerable carbon footprint in manufacture, and some of the metals, minerals that are used in them are challenging environmentally as well. So I think we just have to really take a lead from some of the youngsters. Actually, they've absolutely seized on the green agenda. It touches on every area, every industry. We've just all got a role to play in this, but it's understanding the steps that we can take to minimise. I think it's about minimising the impact of the technologies and our behaviours and what we do in industry and in our private lives to minimise that impact.
Thank you for that. Now, Bhavina, we got some questions for you. In fact, you can send in questions at any time through the portal. This is from Adrian, who says, what role do you see Make UK and similar organisations playing in shaping skills policy to ensure that the UK is able to achieve net zero targets? Bhavina, I mean, we've seen so many companies really quickly having to change not just their publicly facing policies, but also just the way they work internally. What role do you see your organisation doing to ensure that that takes place?
Definitely. I think the way I would describe the challenge we all face, whether it's just Make UK or businesses as general, is we have a mountain to climb. We can't quite see the top, but we need to equip ourselves with the tools to be able to get there. So in practice, that means tweaking our education system and our vocational academic education system to make sure that we can prepare and equip businesses to have the skills they need for their future. But it's almost embracing that uncertainty. We won't be able to predict every job that we'll need in the next 5 years, let alone 10 and 15. So what we need to do is make sure that we can build flexibility into everything we do to be able to respond to those changes. And how we're supporting members and manufacturers at the moment is helping them to get involved in the Race to Net Zero campaign, working with the government on that, but crucially, actually helping SMEs who make up 85% of our membership. Sometimes the transition you make doesn't need to be drastic. It's those small baby steps we can all make. So for me, it's probably not having my car and using an electric bike. For a business, it could be rethinking or upgrading the existing equipment they have to make sure that it's more efficient. So there are small changes that we can make, but I don't think we should get too bogged down with the overall big challenge we face, because if we do that, we might not quite make it and hit our targets that we've set ourselves.
Thank you for that, Bhavina. Now, in terms of the way we work, one of the things we've all noticed is how easily or difficult we find working from home. And for many people, that has dramatically reduced our travel. It's hugely reduced our requirement to use very expensive to run buildings with massive plant for computers and air conditioning, and also for heating and lighting. But it's also given us a new set of problems too. Now, for all of you, I'm going to start with Philip on this, but for all of you, I just wonder whether you see what we've learnt in terms of how we could be greener over the last 18 months, despite the way we've been going through this horrific pandemic, whether some of that actually needs to stay, however much many of us can't abide being on our own and actually are enjoying being out at work. Yeah, in a workplace, should I say, rather than working from home.
Yeah, I think the first thing I'll say about this really is it's quite hard to compare, obviously, pandemic levels of, I suppose, impact on the environment with what we want in terms of a recovery, and we shouldn't use that as the benchmark, right? However, to your point, we absolutely need all businesses and ourselves as individuals to rethink how we do things, and that goes right down to thinking about whether or not you do really need to print something, to read it, or you can just access it completely online, travelling for meetings, etc. My view on this is it's about trying to make sure those interactions with colleagues that you're working with are really meaningful and purposeful, and that's what we're trying to do at NCFE. In terms of education as well, it's really about looking across all of our different qualifications, and they're usually made up of little building blocks, units, and thinking where are there opportunities to tweak those to make them, I suppose, more considerate of the environment. And again, that goes right down to things like, when we're talking about taking minutes in a meeting, again, it's about not printing those out. When it's thinking about other areas of job-specific tasks, where are the opportunities where you can put a meeting that is online rather than face-to-face. So it's really about being quite thorough and purposeful in how you approach this.
Thank you for that. And obviously our focus is skills and skills for growth. And one of the things that I wonder with regards to what we've learned over the last 12 or 18 months or so, Rhiannon Kelly, UK Corporate Affairs Director for National Grid, I wonder whether you feel that the skills economy actually works that well when we're all working independently in our own silos at home.
So actually, we've had a slightly different experience at Grid. So we have quite a lot of people who are out and about fixing pylons, or we have quite a lot of construction projects. And they were right back on site within 3 or 4 days. And I spoke to some people who are at site in Kent, and they literally said, and very originally when we all told to work from home, they sort of did think, crikey, we need to work from home. But actually the building and the construction goes on. So they were back on site within 3 or 4 days. And what we saw was loads of innovation about how they do their jobs, but in a different way, in sort of COVID compliant way. So in a way, for the majority of Grid, it hasn't changed the fact that we need to deliver big projects, engineering projects. But one of the things I think does matter and did happen in the last 18 months, as well as COVID, was the Black Lives Matter and the death of George Floyd. And I think that's relevant to net zero, because one of the challenges we have in the energy sector particularly is the lack of diversity. So I think there are some ONS data that suggests that 20% diversity in power, 21% in nuclear. And so we've been doing quite a bit of thinking at Grid about how do we encourage diversity, because if we're going to transform the energy sector, if we're going to create lots of new green jobs, which we will need to make this transformation possible, how do we also make sure that those jobs are diverse? And so that's one of the things that I think has in addition to the pandemic, has shifted in the last year, is this laser focus on we need to do better in diversity in the energy sector in order to deliver our net zero aspirations.
Jim Brown from the Energy Skills Partnership. It was interesting hearing what Rhiannon was saying, because I was actually going to ask about innovation, and it seems that far from stifling innovation has spread around like a flourishing plant in the garden with I can't do the metaphor anymore. But I wonder whether in terms of the future, whether actually any innovation eventually becomes negative for the environment. So the more skills that we develop, which is always seen as a good thing, and it clearly is a good thing, but often those skills deliver either manufacturing or usage of services or usage of power, and all of those things are problematic to us. We're almost like in a vicious circle.
Well, yes and no, because I do think that the innovation, we should be considering the energy efficiency, the resource efficiency, the circular economy as part of all of that. And you're touching on the COVID and the response to that, and the innovation and how that's helped things. I mean, ESP, we were quite well ahead with using digital technologies. We work with colleges across Scotland, so in order to engage with them, we had to adopt some of these technologies very early. So when COVID hit, it was a shift, but it wasn't a major shift for us. But actually, our engagement with our members has improved significantly. Our engagement with industry has improved significantly, and it's all been done virtually. So, as I said earlier, my 20,000 miles a year, my numerous plane journeys, and for business as well as personal, they've all ceased. So I think there's a lot of learning that's come out of the COVID crisis that we can bring forward. There are new innovations that can enhance energy efficiency, a big focus on resource efficiency. So I think if we approach it with the right attitude, we can absolutely have a negative impact on or lesser impact on the carbon footprint, and help to accelerate that transition to net zero.
All right, many thanks to all of you for this discussion this afternoon. To close, I'm going to ask you all a very brief question. It's the same question, not as bad as the last one, I hope, but it may well be. And that is to all of you, what is the most important carbon polluting thing that we all have to decide enough is enough? Bhavina.
Oh, that's a tough one. I think for manufacturers,
I've got to answer it as well. You got the easiest job because you're the first. You were the last time. You got everything at your disposal this time.
I would actually say it's probably not the obvious one, but for manufacturers, it's going to be making sure that the equipment they have can be upgraded, because I think in the conversation we've just had, digital technology will be an enabler for that green revolution that we face. So if we're thinking about decarbonisation, actually just those kind of really basic equipment that we've got in manufacturing sites will be upgraded. So if we can make that change across all of our 20,000 manufacturers we represent, I think we can make a really big change.
Thank you, Bhavina. Jim, what have we got to quit? What have we got to stop doing?
Food waste is one of my bugbears. I think people need to be smart about that and stop the production of greenhouse gases from landfill, etc.
Rhian Kelly, what have we got to stop doing?
I think we're going to have to take the emissions out of heating, particularly in homes. I think totally heating's about 37% of our greenhouse gas emissions. We're going to need to find a way to do it in a more cleaner way.
Thank you for that. And finally, Philip Lefebvre, what have we really got to just quit? Enough is enough.
So I'm going to challenge the assertion that we have to stop doing things. I think it's about how we change doing things. So if you take something like the airline industry, I don't think we're going to get to a place when we stop travelling internationally. And I hope on a personal level and just at a broader level that doesn't ever happen. But we have to change the way we think about these things. I think the car industry is a great one. You know, we are genuinely nearly at a point when we're moving to entirely electric cars. That didn't seem possible probably 10 years ago. So it's about how do we adapt and change rather than stop. I'm
going to send anyone who tells me they have a vice to you.
Exactly right.
Because you can say, no, don't give up your vice. Just change how you do it. Listen, thank you I've loved this session. Thank you to all of you for joining us. Philip Lefebvre, Chief Strategy Officer of NCFE. If we want to find out more about NCFE, how can we do it?
So you can go online. We also have a Twitter handle, and you can also just get in touch with us and speak to us.
Okay. And Rhian Kelly, thank you. If you want to find out more about the National Grid, how do we do that?
Our website's full of great information.
Okay, and so are you. So thank you for your time this afternoon. Jim Brown, the Energy Skills Partnership. I know you're going to send me online, but is there somewhere specific we should go?
Yes, esp-scotland.ac.uk.
Many thanks for that. And finally, Bhavina Bakada, Senior Campaigns and Skills Policy Manager for Make UK. How do we find out more?
Follow us on Twitter at Make UK Campaigns.
Thank you to all of you, and thank you for joining in that session at home. That was the role of skills excellence in delivering zero carbon, and that concludes probably what I thought was going to be one of the most difficult and possibly narrow sessions, but I did thoroughly enjoy that, so thank you for watching.